So back to the inclusion definition here. Inclusion, we simply say it's a choice. All right, it's a choice. You have the choice. You choose to include someone that is different from you, or you choose not to include, right? So as simple as that, right? As simple as that. I think we have friends putting into the chat box saying, make sure every voices is heard. Yep. So basically it means the same thing. Make sure that everyone is bring into the room and they have a seat on the table and have their voices being heard, right? So that is the choice that organization choose to do. So if I may relate that to David's questions early on why suddenly DA&I become a huge topic, well, it has to do with the a social event that happened the past 2 years or even 5 years ago. A lot of things that coming from the US because of the gender differences, racism in Europe, Brexit, and so on and so forth. So many issues that comes in, and then businesses started to see the benefits of diversity and inclusion. And if they don't address it, it's going to impact businesses. So a lot of company on board and choose, right? They choose to include. That's the choice, all right? There are companies still ding dong around whether I should do diversity and inclusion or not. That's a choice, right? No one says if you don't do it, it's wrong, but it's a human thing. We say it's a human thing. Right?
I'll add on to that on two aspects. One is the human thing. It's the right thing to do, so to speak. We like to include and we recognize the diversity. The other part is the business aspect. As in, in the past, we work in manufacturing, everybody just do the same thing in the same way, in the right order at the same time. So that's very manufacturing. Today, what we want to do is more creative things. Everybody has got different ideas of how to do things. And maybe if you have different ideas you put together, it becomes a much better idea. So with the diversity and inclusion in place, it actually makes business sense in today's world.
Yes, yes, totally agree. Thank you, CJ, for bringing that point out. Yes. And in D&I, diversity and inclusion, we also have a term that comes in as equality. What is equality? Does anyone know what is equality? Maybe I'll just put up the picture here, right? Equality simply means you treat everyone fairly. 平等. In Chinese, we call it 平等. Yeah, fair. Yes, yes, yeah. Kevin, good question. What is the difference between equity and equality? I see the pictures. Yeah. So equity simply means that you treat the person according to his or her needs, right? So for example, this little man here, if you're treating him fairly, right, giving him just one box here, he will not be able to see the football match. But what he needs is 2 boxes. And this man here, he's tall enough. He don't need that. So the resources in your organization, you should review and see what is needed for different type of people. One typical example, does your organization has disability toilet? Disability toilet in your organization? If have, you can raise your hand using the reaction button and let me know. 有没有? Kevin, yes? Oh, great. Matal, yes, yes. Why there's disability toilet there? It's for the disability group of people that needs that, all right? So that is one way we're seeing equity policy. So equity, equality, it's not about individual that can drive, can change, but organization, companies, your organizations will need to have policy of equality and equity in this case. All right. I hope that it's clear enough. So when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we are actually talking about 3 levels here, right? Particularly in Asia, right? We emphasize on focusing on the deeper level. So what does this deeper level means? So first we have this 3 levels is introduced by Professor Philip Rosinski, the creator of Cultural Orientations Framework. He says the first layer of level, it's diversity 1.0, which is the external, the things that you can see, external, all right? Like race, gender, ethnicity, as well as the language that you speak. All this fall within the external diversity, visible, something that you can see, you can tell immediately. That's on outside the surface. The second layer is internal or connective diversity, right? Which is slightly internal, the second layer, talking about your connective, your mental diverse program. And the third one is implicit or hidden diversity, 3.0, which is much more complicated then. So let's dive a little bit into that. Right now, a lot of D&I initiative actions that have been taken by organizations. I'm not sure in our group here today, how much is focusing on D&I 2.0 and 3.0. A lot that I've seen right now in China, Asia Pacific companies is still focusing on D&I 1.0, the first layer, right? The first layer, it's what we call the purpose is to combat or to challenge the prejudice and also discrimination against a certain group of people, right? And promote equal opportunities. So it includes race, age, ethnicity, gender, religion, height, disabilities, country of origin, appearance, like what CJ mentioned, receptionist, example, name, my name, right? Can get discrimination as well. Language, the accent that I speak, Malaysian accent, that can get discriminated as well. So D&I 1.0, it's to combat, to challenge, right? To remove or reduce the challenges, the bottleneck of diversity 1.0. So it's really very foundation. So it has to do with gathering, grouping, or hiring in many of your organizations. Now talking about hiring female leaders, more female into the workforce, or more male into the workforce for some of the luxury companies that are working. For example, La Pare, they are actually wanted to hire more male into their workforce, right? So that is talking about recruitment, hiring, interview, and so on, right? The purpose is to build a mutual understanding and respect. That is 1.0, right? That's 1.0. And 2.0, internal and connective diversity, very straightforward. It's talking about something that is inside you, all right? Inside each one of us. That is different. The way we think, diverse mental, our connective diverse mental model, right? Our different ideas, our perspectives, that is beyond 1.0, okay? So the purpose here is to promote creativity and innovation. That's what CJ mentioned, the benefits of diversity, right? And inclusion here. And at this stage, we are already able to avoid any categorical thinking, right? That could potentially arise from stereotyping and discrimination because you're already past 1.0, okay? And inclusion at this stage, if you can imagine the yin and yang symbol, you know what is yin and yang? Yeah, right? Like you Tai Chi, the yin and yang. So imagine the yin and yang. We often talk about differences, like me and CJ, we are very different, although our countries are neighbors. We speak different local dialect, for example. So differences.
You have the same family name also?
Oh, yes. So in this case, the differences that we have, right? For example, CJ may prefer to view time as a scarcity resource. So like to put a lot of things at one time, slot time. So run and do a lot of tasks. Me would prefer a more relaxed. We still have time, relax. We start at 2. Why open the room at 1:30? Right? So in this case, the difference is we or my at diversity 2.0, we should look at it as from I should embrace scarcity time at the same time and embracing plentiful time. All right. So imagine the yin and yang. These two should be integrated. Instead of I'm saying scarcity time is not good because you're putting a lot of pressure, CJ. Is, you know, plentiful time is better. My way of working is much better because it's more relaxed, more well-being, wellness there. Yeah. So instead of or, you're choosing one or the other, it should be the yin and yang coming together to form one unity. All right. So that is the diversity 2.0 then. So the opportunity is seen as an opportunity to integrate rather than a threat. Right? If you see someone that is different coming to your group as a new member, you wouldn't want to say, oh, it's new. I don't want to make friends with him at this moment because I don't know him yet. And diversity 3.0, it's a much more complex D&I here, what we're talking about. It's implicit, it's inside, it's hidden. You cannot see, you cannot tell. You don't even know it exists in you or in your team until you talk about it, until you explore and see your weaknesses, your blind spot, then you realize, oh, actually this blind spot can be turned into an opportunity, can be leveraged into a strength, right? So we say it's an unconscious diversity. We don't know it exists, especially in a team. For example, I work with a group of Chinese team executives. All of them would assume we are all Chinese. We don't have much diversity there. Even we say homogeneous team, all Chinese, you still have diversity. You still have very different communication preference, viewing time, sense of power, responsibility, mode of thinking, and so on and so forth. Still have many diversity. Those that is hidden within your team, right? For example, this team, the leader and the team, they embrace egalitarian. They embrace flat management. That means when I'm a leader, I make decision, I would ask everyone for input, right? That's a good thing, right? That sounds very good. I'm inclusive. I ask everyone, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And at the end, the challenge for this team is that they will take a decisions that supposed to be made in an hour. It takes 2 days. Okay, so they realize that is the bottleneck. That's the problem. Why our decision-making process is so slow. So during that team coaching, they realize there is another opportunity for us hidden in our diversity is hierarchical. Leader, you have the choice to make the decisions when needed, necessary, right on the spot. So after that session, he realized, oh, this is something that I can leverage on. So in this example, the dimensions of hierarchical versus egalitarian is fully embraced into this team. And that's what I mean by the hidden diversity. Until they talk about it, then they realize it is blind spot for them, right? So mastering all these 3 levels, 1, 2, and 3, it's important on a sequence, right? But at the same time, right, if you're doing 2.0 and 3.0, it can also help to address the 1.0 as well. Okay, so that's based on our experience. Any questions so far? I think I've been talking too much on this. Any question?
Questions so far? Anything or any comments?
Yeah, any thoughts, comment?
How does this recommended D&I practice reconcile with cultures that have higher power distance? Well, we are a little bit ahead of ourselves. But you want to talk about power distance, or you want to leave it till later?
So CJ, are we taking this question?
Up to you. Do you want to address this now? Because I understand that you may be talking about power distance somewhere later. Are you?
We have the COF tools, but happy to address that for Victoria. Victoria, would you mind to unmute yourself and tell me a little bit more? What do you mean by the higher power distance here? What exactly the challenge there for you?
Well, as we understand, for cultures like Chinese cultures where power distance is high, relatively speaking. So for instance, in most companies, bosses probably usually try to keep a good distance, or I mean, the subordinates probably tend to not dare to speak up as much as Western cultures in general. So in this case, you know, how does the recommended practices of diversity and inclusion, how should it work into this kind of cultural dynamic in that the employees can be encouraged, or rather the bosses can become more open to, you know, listen to their subordinates in that sense?
Okay, thank you, Victoria. So I hear two questions there. One is how do we engage the management, the leadership team who has a very high power distance in the organizations, play a huge power in the culture there. How do we engage them in the diversity and inclusion initiatives? The second question is, how do we encourage the employees in this type of organizations to speak up and feel to be more inclusive? I think the two questions, it comes back to the foundation. Does this organization has the urgency to do the D&I initiatives? Okay. Do we want to do we have the urgency to do this change? It's a change, right? It's a change in people's behavior. The leadership teams need to change their behavior in the sense. They need to somehow shown being less power distance, get closer to the employees and create a safer, or what we call psychological safety for employees to speak up. Yep. So I would say first, does the management team has the urgency to do this? Some organizations, very high power distance, and they realize the importance, the business case to do D&I is very strong, and they are willing to change. And there is another group of people seeing that I don't want to change. It's all given by US headquarter or UK headquarter. It doesn't have nothing to do with me, right? I'm just in Asia, I'm just in China. So in that case, you wouldn't see much change. You will only see the very foundations of awareness training, unconscious bias training. That's it, to be very honest and straightforward. Yeah, all right. So it goes back to, again, the leadership is very, very important. The commitment is very, very important. Yeah, I hope that answer the questions in a nutshell. And yeah, we're happy to explore more if you have more to exchange on that. All right, thank you, Victoria. CJ, any questions that I need to take here? I saw a lot of people.
Yep, Kevin, no, this is a comment. Okay, by the way, I just, there's a JPEG file, a picture file. It's the QR code for Weixin Chun. So if you want to, you can download and scan. I got some people coming in. So that's to Kevin's request for WeChat community. So that's done. And yeah, Kevin say that we develop a DEI matrix that connected with business priorities. So it's about business. All metrics and action plans from DEI audit we delivered last year to define our opportunity in DEI. Fantastic.
Awesome, awesome. Yes, belonging, it's a huge thing in Japan, right? So we're seeing that belonging, the B, it's very much now bringing into the light as well. Yeah, in Japan, and then slowly coming to China and the other part of Asia Pacific. Yeah, and yes, definitely the metrics, it's very important, right? The leading metrics, leading indicator, as well as the lagging indicator, right? All right. Okay, so let's move on then. I'm going to skip this one. So I'm just very quickly to share with you, when we talk about diversity and inclusion, there's something we need to understand, the mindset, why when we face differences, there are certain emotions and reactions. So we're using this intercultural development continuum developed by Professor Milton Bennett from the US. And this tool has exists in the market for over 30 years right now, and is well research, proof, validated. So when we went into, or we face cultural differences, we start with the mind, when we were young, we come into a stage of denial. So denial here means simply you don't see difference, right? You ignore difference. So example would be, a French CEO came to Beijing to meet a Chinese manager. Chinese manager during that meeting doesn't have the eye contact with the British CEO. And that CEO immediately complained that this Chinese manager has no respect on me because he doesn't look at me. There's no eye contact. So when I checked with the British CEO said, I asked him, do you think there's a cultural difference, a difference there in terms of preference? He said, no, it's just simply no respect. So this is what we call at the denial stage. You don't see a difference there, right? You don't see there's differences. You don't see there's a cultural difference. And then we move into the defensive, recognize differences, but evaluate them negatively. My way of working, Malaysian way of working is better than Singaporean way. My way of working is better than CJ's way. That is my defensive, right? I'm evaluating it negatively. So for example, a US company come to China, open branches and set up factories, and they would expect the American way of management. So this is the real case. Just 2 days ago, I had a training with a group of American company employees, and they moved their factory to Shanghai. And they now require all the Shanghai employees to speak in English, in the official language. And that creates a big reactions from the employees. Yeah. So it's literally at the defensive way of saying, my way of management, this is a US company, you come here to work, you follow my way. So this is defensive, all right? And the third one is minimization. This one I've talked about at the beginning of the sessions already. You see cultural differences, but you minimize it. We are all the same eventually. We are all human. Who don't like money, right? Everyone that works like money, okay? So that is the minimization. This three stages is called enocentric. You only have one lens, okay? Monoculture, just like the fish, only one lens. Right? What we are trying to do here with the diversity and inclusion is to expand your lens, right? So that you have multiple lenses. Let's move to acceptance, recognize and accept differences, but yet at this stage, you don't know what to do. And then adaptation, you adapt the differences and you know what to do. That's the case. And then integrations, you integrate to the yin and yang together. And then ultimately leverage. All right, leverage, what does it mean? Leverage, basically, I look for the gems in you. For example, me and CJ, we come from very different background. He comes from sales background, I come from finance background. And I recognize these differences And I see in CJ, he has a very good selling skills. And I'm not good at that. So then I would use CJ's skills, strengths, the diamond in him, the gems in him to help and improve my selling. Okay, so that is leverage. So we want to achieve ultimately the D&I 3.0, or the diversity, success, and inclusion would be to achieve the unity at this leverage stage. All right. So that's the attitudes when dealing with differences. Any question? This is a little bit of the science there behind of why people seeing differences, and then they have some emotions and reaction. Okay, so normally in this model itself, I can talk for 1 day. So we go in and explore, and we need a lot of reflections. But here I'm just spending like 5 minutes there, right? So now we comes to the very important how are we measuring diversity and inclusions, and how we actually build or nurture an inclusive culture. So this is the tool Culture Orientations Framework developed by Philip Brosinski. So he is the best-selling author for coaching across cultures and global coaching. And the book is also recommended by Harvard Business Harvard Business Review, right, as one of the leadership book. And in COF, we say there are 7 categories: sense of power and responsibility, time management approach, how different we are seeing times, and how are we defining ourselves, our identity and purpose. How is our organizations being arranged, right? Hierarchical and egalitarian, the power distance thing. And notions of territorial boundaries basically means that how do I keep boundaries, my preference? Do I share my personal life with you, or I keep my personal life to myself? I don't share, all right? So that's the notions of territory and boundaries, communication patterns, and lastly, the modes of thinking. And in the 7 categories, we've further divided into 17 subcategories, a standard 17 subcategories of diversity there, where you can see that the blue color here is what we call the orientation, all right? The orientation. So there are 17 here dimensions, and you can actually customize. For us, sometimes we help organizations to customize inclusion and also exclusions. So the principle of customization is that we believe the orientations, all of the orientations here, they have a certain benefits, all right? So that people can leverage. Okay, so for example, hierarchy and equality. What are the benefits of hierarchy? What are the benefits of equality? What are the benefits of inclusion? What are the benefits of exclusion, right? They both have benefits. Right? So again, it links to the yin and yang in concept.